Welcome to ATM Bros. Special thanks to ACDC with Money Talk on the Regan's Corner Sports Network. Okay. And special thanks to Autumn Academy for here on YouTube. So, Aiden, welcome to a first ever edition of Regan's Corner ATM Bros for you because we're so money. What are we talking about today? What are we talking about today, Mr. Thatcher?
Yeah, we're gonna help some potential fantasy players with the running back rankings here. Try and give them some insight on who we think is gonna have a big season. So we'll go over our top 10 and maybe address some guys that are near the top, and hopefully give some help to some potential fantasy players next year here.
Absolutely. Because it's fantasy season here. It's draft season coming up because it's in the heart of June. People getting that draft in August, in the late of July here, trying to think who they're going to draft. But let's start off at 10 here, Mr. Thatcher. Who do you see at number 10?
Yeah, for me, 10, this was tough, but I really like Najee Harris there. I think with a rookie quarterback like Pickett, they're going to have to depend on him a lot, give the ball to Najee. But the offensive line still concerns me. It's going to be better than last year, but I'm a little bit more worried about his rushing yards. I think he's going to get the ball plenty in terms of receiving, but I have him at 10 just because I think that offensive line still needs to improve a little bit. But I think he's still going to have a big season, and he's pretty good at staying healthy, so that's why I have him at 10 there.
I have a shocker here, ladies and gentlemen. I have Alvin Kamara at 10. Okay. An absolute shocker for whoever in fantasy worlds. I've had him for the last 2 years. But with his suspension, with Jameis Winston at helm at the quarterback position, with Thomas coming back, with Olave, a lot of the weapons you see now with the Saints, it takes away a little bit from Alvin's projection when he comes back. So I'm going to say Alvin Kamara at that 10 spot. He's still going to give you Alvin Kamara numbers, but there's just so much to that offense with a quarterback that's mediocre that you just don't know.
And Sean Payton's not going to be either there, Josh. So you kind of have to trust who's ever calling the plays because Payton does a great job at designing plays and getting Kamara the ball, but who knows who's going to be calling the plays for him this season. So to me, that's a big question mark. And the left tackle position, they lost Armstead. Looks like Penning from Northern Iowa is going to start there. So they have a couple question marks on that Saints team. So I don't blame you for having him at 10.
Absolutely. But since you started at 9, I'm going to start at my 9th pick here. J.K. Dobbins. After having everyone last year say how high he was going to be in the fantasy draft, he tears his Achilles. Okay. One of the worst injuries that you could tear as a running back. I think he's coming back, and I think he's coming back like Adrian Peterson all day, every day. Especially in a running offense like the Baltimore Ravens are, with Lamar getting hurt himself last year. Watch out for the Ravens. I feel like JK has an absolute stellar year, but I'm only putting him 9th just to kind of see how he does, see how he's kind of adjusting. Okay, most people have him about 15, 16 range. I have him at 9.
Yeah, kind of had a tough season. The whole Ravens running back group kind of had a tough season last year. Seems like all those guys got hurt. So look for him to come out. Like to see him and Gus Edwards maybe not split carries, but maybe take a little bit off the load for Dobbins. Not try to, especially coming off that ACL injury. You don't want to overload him. So that's the only reason he wasn't in my top 10 because I think they'll maybe do like a 70-30 with carries with him and Edwards. But for me, I really like Austin Eckler in that 9 spot. He's got a stud at quarterback in Justin Herbert. One of the best receiving backs, too, in the league in Austin Eckler. And he's going up against a pretty not great rush division. Obviously, the Broncos have a pretty good rush defense, but Oakland's not great. The Chiefs are decent. So I think he's going to have a big season. For me too, is the interior of that line is a big question. They have kid they drafted from Northwestern last year. I'm blanking on his name right now. Can't remember his name, but their tackles are fine, and their center they have Filer. So I think for me, he's going to have 9. I expect him to get a lot of looks in the flat, a couple screen plays. But yeah, for me, he'll be number 9. Rashawn Slater, that's the tackle's name, just came to mind. But yeah, I expect him to get a lot of receptions, and hopefully the interior of that offensive line can open some holes up for him. But for me, he'll be at 9 this season.
Yeah, I like him at 9. It seems like he's one of the most underrated running backs, though, in fantasy. He'll get you numbers. He's usually healthy. Um,
He's
he's more of
consistent
a
too, which is nice.
right, very consistent running back. So, Aiden, who do you have at 8?
This one was tough for me. I was either going to do Aaron Jones or Joe Mixon, but after the Packers lost Devontae Adams, I think Aaron Jones is going to have a bigger role in that offense. And, the Bengals have Boyd, Chase, T. Higgins. So I think the workload will be less for him. I think Aaron Jones will have more of an opportunity there. But, that Bengals O-line is improving, which is a good thing for Mixon. But, yeah, for me, it's just I think Aaron Jones will have more opportunities to put up points. So that's why I have Mixon at 8 there too.
Okay, I like that. I like it. I'm gonna put Aaron Jones at my 8th spot. You talked me into it there, because Adams is gone. He's another one where you kind of have to take a waiver on him, because you got Dalton in that backfield as well, and he's not been super healthy for the last couple of years. But you also need to take that step forward with Adams going, and you don't have that great of wide receiver core, and you have one of the greatest greatest quarterbacks ever, and Aaron Rodgers skill wise. But there might be OG Beckham may come to the Packers. Kind of looking at it, Odell, and that's another thing where if Odell Beckham comes to the Packers, you still got a few games where Jones could eat early in the year. It puts yourself in a great playoff position.
Yeah, that to me, that's a big thing. They maybe need to add like a Beckham or like some kind of veteran receiver because they have a lot of young guys there. I think they added Sammy Watkins, or maybe I think it was Sammy Watkins, but they get Bakhtiari back.
Hello, sports fans. Indiana Farm Bureau has been helping companies like us here at Regan's Corner Sports Podcast Network since 1934. So, get a free.
I think I had a little bit of lapse in my connection there, but got it up and running. But yeah, I think we left off talking about Aaron Jones at my 7th spot. Did you say who your number 7th running back was?
No, not yet. I would say Austin Eckler is probably my 7 running back, just for a lot of things you said. How he's just a mover, man. He's just somebody you want to move. Like he's just consistent with fantasy numbers, with everything like this. And in beautiful Union Mills, it's raining here. So if you see some raindrops and this and that on the camera, don't be alarmed. But anyway, Eckler in sunny California with a run. Like you said, the division isn't the greatest in run division. So he'll eat. He'll eat. So I'll put him at 7.
All right, I like that. And then jumping to 6. This is kind of a shocker, but I'll give my reasons why. I think Christian McCaffrey has the most talent out of any running back and potential, but that offensive line has stunk ever since he's been a rookie in Carolina. I mean, I don't know what Matt Rule and Tepper are doing there. They haven't addressed. They did get a guy from Ike Ekwonu from North Carolina.
North Carolina State. Okay. Christian McCaffrey is also my number 6 running back as well.
There we go. Can you hear me, Josh? Josh? Josh, can you hear me? Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Hello. Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, sorry about that. We're having some, I don't know what's going on. I may have to turn on my hotspot really fast if that lags again. Yeah, McCaffrey, like I was saying, the other big thing about McCaffrey too is his injury concerns. Last year, I'm not sure. I think he missed like 6 to 8 games. So you can't pick a guy that high and, have him miss, almost half the season. So to me, that's why I had him at 6. Because I think he has all the potential in the world. I think he's the best receiving running back in the league. Rushing, I think he's top 5, but without a solid offensive line and with all the injuries he's had in the past, I think it's a little concerning to pick him, top 5. So that was my logic for having him 6.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. McCaffrey 6 on my list too. My original list, he was even lower because of the injury prone of the last 2 years. People picking him at number 1 overall because of how great he is. So when you're that great, but can't stay on the field, it's kind of hard for fantasy owners to pick you year in, year out. It's like a Le'Veon Bell situation where if you get burned, you kind of want to push the guy back a little bit.
Yeah, to me, he's kind of in that same boat of Saquon Barkley, where they have all the potential in the world, but injuries can kind of derail how your season's going. And I feel like with McCaffrey, although he's probably the most talented, yeah, he just can't stay healthy. So if he can fix that, he would be up more on the list. But I think it's fair to have him where we have him right now. But he could have a great season and could play a lot of games. But as of right now, I think that sixth spot kind of suits him pretty well.
Absolutely. Absolutely, totally. Okay, number 5. I have, wait for it. Trying to think who I would have at 5. I actually have Derrick Henry at 5. And people
Interesting.
be like, "Well, Josh, why you have him at 5?" Because of the same things we've talked about. With Henry's been durable, but there's been seasons where in his career where you look at his size and this and that, and if you stack the box, he doesn't do well. And when you have AJ Green and Philly, all you're going to get is stacked boxes, to be honest with you, because Julio's signing somewhere else, probably Indy. Um, so, who do you got in that wide receiver core that you can trust to open the field up for Derrick Henry? Because Tannehill isn't that great of a quarterback. So, I just think his numbers go down tremendously. Even though he missed half the year last year, I just think his numbers go down. He's going to be the 5th best running back when it's said and done. So give me him at 5.
Yeah, I think that loss of AJ Brown makes them a little bit more predictable. I think, a lot of teams are going to be stacking the box and just being like, all right, well, beat us passing the ball with Tannehill. They have Treylon Burks from Arkansas, who they drafted in the first round, who, kind of suspect. He's a rookie receiver. I didn't have him ranked super high. I certainly had a lot of other of the rookie receivers rated higher than him. But for me with Henry, obviously that he had that foot last year, missed a lot of the season. He's in a weak division, which helps. So he's going to play the Jaguars and the Texans twice a year. So he'll probably have a couple big games. But for me, it's all about the consistency. And I think some games he's going to, have a tough time putting up more than, 20 points. But I think he's going to have a lot of big games this season. But for me, in that 5th spot, I really like Kamara there. Obviously, with Winston at quarterback, kind of average to below average there. Should have a decent O-line. But for me, it's all about the play calling. How are they going to get this guy ball? You can't just run it to him every play and expect him to do something like that. So I think trying to be creative in the offense and getting him the ball in certain ways, whether that be screen passes, maybe just, have him play the slot, just throwing it out to the flat, doing whatever it takes to get Kamara the ball, I think will be important. But yeah, obviously that suspension is going to hurt him this season. But it's incredible. I've never seen someone, he looks so effortless out there when he runs, but people just bounce off of him. I mean, his agility is amazing. So for me, that's kind of why I have him in that 5th spot. But I expect him to have a pretty good season this year for the Saints in a kind of questionable season, not little gray area for the Saints this season with, how they're going to do without Sean Payton. But I expect him to still be the same great player that he always is.
Absolutely. So for number 4, I'm going Najee Harris. I know the Steelers' offense line is not that great, but I feel like Mitch Trubisky actually is an improvement from old Ben Roethlisberger or Kenny Pickett. I think that both their quarterback styles are more kind of around Harris's ability. Dump it off, let him go. I think Harris has a big year this year, Najee. So I'm going to pick Harris actually at number 4.
Yeah, I was going to say when I had him at 9, I was going to make a bold take. I think he'll get over 1,000 receiving and rushing yards this season because obviously they lost Juju. They did add kid from Georgia, Pickens, and they still have Claypool. But I really think they're going to get him involved in the passing game, and I think he's going to have 1,000 rushing and receiving yards. So I think he'll have a big season. But for me at 4, Dalvin Cook, it's hard for me to put him any lower than 4. He could even be in the top 2, but he's really got a solid offensive line. Kirk Cousins is about an average quarterback as you're going to get. He'll have Justin Jefferson, so he's got and Thielen, so he's got plenty of help on the outside. But I think with me too, Dalvin Cook, as we start to get towards the top, people start to realize that, man, he's a really good receiving back as well, not only running, and he runs really hard downhill too. So, and he's pretty healthy for the most part. But for me, Dalvin Cook's there. He's always pretty consistent, and he doesn't really get hurt that much. So that was my logic for kind of having him at 4. And the Vikings offensive line's decent. They have Darisaw used to play at Tech. He's their left tackle. He's pretty solid. They got Bradbury from North Carolina State. So they have a decent O-line. So I think him in that 4 spot is pretty good, I would say.
Yeah, I like that because he's had history of injuries, but like he's played through them for the most part the last 2 years. And Kirk Cousins is servable quarterback to a running back that great, and the weapons on the outside. Because Jefferson maybe in both our top 5s when we talk about wide receivers, because he is that damn good. So you have that kind of stretching it out for Cook. For me, number 3 is Joe Mixon, because Joe, and then the other Joe Cool, Joe Burrow, just a lethal combination. Okay, you can even call them the trio in Cincinnati, because you have him, Chase, and Burrow. It's just, to me, I think Mixon has great numbers this year. Great numbers, outstanding. So I'm going to go Mixon at 3. And I know most fantasy guys will be like, what are you talking about? Why are you putting Mixon up in 3, but hurting Kamara down in the top, barely in the top 10? And I'm like, well, you got somebody who's on the rise. You got somebody on the downfall. This is on potential. This isn't on what they did last year. Okay. So I have Mixon at 3. So who is your number 3 back?
Yeah, I'm going to put Derrick Henry in there. I think you had him at 5 or 6. I think losing A.J. Brown, actually, people think, oh, losing A.J. Brown, they're going to run the ball more. But like you talked about, if you kind of stack the box against Henry, he has a tough time kind of breaking it outside. His speed is not the strength of him. His speed is being able to run downhill and run over guys. So if there's a bunch of guys in the box, if one guy gets on him, and then another guy can get a hold of him. So I think they become a little bit more predictable in that aspect. But like I said, he plays the Jaguars twice this season and the Texans. Colts have a pretty good run defense. So, that game, both of those games may be questionable. But, I think he's going to have a couple big games this season where he puts up 30 to 40 points. So, if you're looking for a guy like that who could potentially, help you win a game or help you win a couple games, I think consistency is a little bit of a concern. I think he may struggle to put up more than 14 to 15 points in some games this season, but the big games, when he has big games, he's going to have big games. So that was my logic for putting him at 3 and have him in that 3 hole there.
Absolutely. I could so see that, especially after the injury year. He's going to come back motivated. I just don't like the kind of how easy Tennessee can be scouted now without A.J. Brown. Unless this rookie comes in like A.J. Brown did, I just think it's a wrap for Tennessee this year. It gets a little bit easier with the Leonard injury in that division, because the other 2 teams in that division are just trash. The Texans and the Jaguars, you're going to eat at least 4 games in that schedule, if not 6, because Leonard is the heart and soul of the Colts defense. So it's going to be hard.
You guys still have Buckner though, Josh. I mean, Kwity Paye.
Right.
I expect Paye to have a big season. I really liked him I kind of wanted the Giants to take him last year. I think he's going to have, kind of had a quiet season last year, but I think he's going to set the edge very well for the Colts. And their back end, their back end's pretty solid. So I wouldn't, count on those Colts games as easy, 20 to 30 point games. I think he's going to have to earn it if he does.
Right, for sure. So my second one is Dalvin Cook. Okay. For a lot of things you said already on the program, I just think he's a stud. He's just one of those guys that's just generational talent. You can pencil him in for average of 20 points per game when he's healthy. And it's just a reliable number 2, number 1 pick that he's going to be there at the end in the playoffs, especially if you have a league like mine and the OJ Slow White Bronco League, fantasy league, where everyone makes the playoffs. So to have somebody like that who will be at the playoffs and perform like he does every single year is just a huge weapon. So I'm going to pick him number 2. And most likely with running backs, the first 3 are the first 3 off the board. So in any fantasy draft. So I would say, Cook, you're almost guaranteed a nice little spot in your league if you draft after him well. But yeah, so
I like that. I think in most leagues, I think a lot of people kind of know who the number 1 pick is. We obviously will have the same number 1 running back, but there's a couple guys up there who it could be a question mark. So he could maybe be the second running back, maybe even the first, but he could also be the 5th or the 6th. It just kind of depends on how people look at him and how they grade other running backs. Because I know for me at 2, I have Chubb. Just because that Browns offensive line is one of the best in football. I would say second best behind your Colts. And he's getting Watson. Well, I don't know if Watson's going to play this season. That's still kind of up in the air. They still do have Baker, though, who, is good at handing the ball off. So, with a good offensive line like that, they have Kareem Hunt, too, who's a great, backup running back as well. But obviously, you kind of want to give the ball to Chubb more. He's just more of a downhill runner and really hard guy to tackle. Has great breakaway speed too. Once you kind of get him in space, he's just a really tough guy to tackle. The only reason I had him at 2 and not 1 is that rush defense. Obviously, he has to go up against the Ravens, who I think had one of the best rushing defenses in the league last year. The Bengals have a top 10 rush defense, and we all know how good the Steelers are. It seems like they have a player on each level of their defense who can, potentially be a Pro Bowler or All Pro with, TJ Watt. Then you got guys like Devin Bush, Minka Fitzpatrick. So it's going to be tough for those 6 games. But I think besides that, with that offensive line, he's going to be a really tough guy to contain. And him, with me too, consistency. I think he's always going to get you 18 to 20 points a game and doesn't get hurt. So that kind of security blanket of knowing you'll always have him and he'll be consistent. So that was my reason for having him at 2.
Yeah, I love that pick. I have him at 11, just based on the other 2 running backs in Cleveland. They have a 3-headed monster in the backfield. Plus, on the outside with Cooper, and their tight end's really good. So they have weapons. It's just, will they have Deshaun Watson? Will they have Baker? Will they have Jacoby Brissett? So you don't know what the quarterback position is. If it's Watson, Chubb's instantly in my top 5. But we don't know if it's Jacoby Brissett. I like Jacoby Brissett. I wish Colts kept him. To be honest with you, instead of going with
Phillip Rivers or Carson Wentz. I think it was Rivers they went with that year, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if they didn't do that, then we might have had an all-star with Jacoby. We don't know. But anyway, in this setting, I don't like Jacoby's thing between the 2 other quarterbacks. with Baker and with Carson Wentz. So when he's saying all that stuff, I just don't like what all it is. So I'm putting him at 11. And number 1, it's got to be our boy Jonathan Taylor, okay, from the Indianapolis Colts, okay. He's got kind of a Jordan Howard first 2 years here in the league where he just took off. The first year it was kind of a little bit okay with the fantasy. It was a roller coaster ride. Okay, it's like Six Flags. Okay, with him, with fantasy owners. Last year it was more consistent. It was more because they had a little bit better younger quarterback. With Carson Wentz, at times he was better than Philip Rivers with the deep ball, with dumping it down. It's just with Carson, it's the play at the end of the game where he just does too much.
Yep.
So skill wise, he was better than Philip. Mentally wise, Philip was way better than him. As a Colts fan, you wanted Philip back instantly. But you just can't go against Carson. You just can't go against Jonathan Taylor in this draft because he's the most reliable running back. And plus, having Matt Ryan, who is Mr. Reliable to begin with, at center, it's just a beautiful marriage waiting to happen in Indy.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that was kind of went underrated. The Colts, what was a 3rd-round pick?
3rd-round pick, yeah. They got Matt Ryan very cheap.
Yeah, so I mean, a guy like that, a guy who's been to a Super Bowl, won an MVP, like you said, Mr. Reliable. I like him in the aspect that I think they're going to run a lot more play action, and I think that's going to really benefit Jonathan Taylor a lot because, the Colts offensive line, Quentin Nelson, probably my favorite offensive lineman in football right now. I mean, the guy's an absolute beast. Ryan Kelly, one of the top centers in football. Braden Smith, excellent right tackle. Good Auburn guy, but that left tackle spot is a little concerning to me. I'm not sure if they'll go with Pryor. He's a solid left tackle, though. He played for the Eagles a couple seasons, can play all kinds of positions, has that versatility. But I think going into that offense with Frank Reich, maybe having a little bit more play action than what Carson Wentz did last year. It was kind of a fiasco with Carson Wentz at some points. He kind of makes you hold your breath in a lot of plays. So I kind of felt for you last season, Josh. But yeah, I expect Jonathan Taylor to have a almost record-breaking season this year with how good that interior of the offensive line is. And I think with a guy like Matt Ryan, who, like you said, reliable, he's not going to turn the ball over a lot. He's just going to play smart, play within his strengths. I think, Taylor's going to be – he's going to be the vocal point of that offense too. He's going to be the guy that they're going to go to when they need a big play or, are going to depend on whether it's 4th and 1 at the goal line or 4th and 1, they just need a yard. Don't be surprised if he's getting the ball. So I think he is definitely should be the number 1 running back. His lower body strength is incredible. I've never seen somebody who can cut kind of like Saquon Barkley almost, where he has such great acceleration from his cuts. But yeah, for me, it's that offensive line. I think you put, you or me behind that offensive line and we'll get a good amount of yards. But, you throw in Jonathan Taylor behind them, I think he's going to have a record-breaking season this year.
Yeah, without a doubt. But closing kind of off this running back segment here on Regan's Corner, who do you have as your sleeper for people in the later rounds, for people in the middle rounds to kind of get after you get your 2nd, 3rd running back possibly, and just the running back takes off on your bench?
Right. So I kind of have 3 guys who I'm kind of looking at right now, and I don't want to bias you, but I'm going to throw Saquon in there just because the potential. I mean, he's one of the most talented running backs in the league. The Giants obviously got Evan Neal. We stole one of your linemen, Josh Glowinski, so he's going to be plugging into that right guard spot. So offensive line is going to get better, but with him, it's injuries. And but I think they're going to involve him in the pass game a lot more. Look at him to play that slot receiver. a lot more than what he did under Jason Garrett and Joe Judge, even though their offense was a dumpster fire. But so Saquon's a sleeper for me. I really like that kid from the Broncos, Javonte Williams. He runs about as hard as anybody in football. Got a really good line too, good left tackle in Bowles. They got that guy Quinn, I forget his last name, but he plays guard. And then they get Russell Wilson, so who is probably the most slept on and underrated move of the offseason. I think a lot of people forgot about that. So those two are my sleepers. And then I also really like Nyheim Hines, Josh, surprisingly. I think he's going to have a really good receiving year this year. I think Frank Reich's going to figure out ways to get him more involved in the passing game. Maybe running, he'll have a good amount of stats, but I think throwing the ball wise, he's going to be I think he'll be a good flex option, and sometimes throw him into that running back 2 slot. If you have an injured guy or maybe a couple guys on the bye week. But those are my 3 sleepers for this season.
Yeah, I like that. I like the Williams, especially with Russell Wilson being in Denver. Allows him to do what he did great at North Carolina. So with Sam Howell and this and that, and be elite. I think he has a bounce back sophomore year. And Elijah Mitchell from San Francisco is my number 1. I think he's going to have a good year, kind of a Jonathan Taylor-like year for the 49ers. So I think he builds on his great freshman campaign going into his sophomore year in the NFL. I think he absolutely balls out, but I don't think he deserves the top 10 spot right now. Maybe not even top 20. But I think he should be one of those people you look at and maybe the 4th or 5th round if you can get him by then. And I think you'll be happy with Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, Mitchell's fast too. If you can get him outside, and is he a 49er now, or is I was looking up to see if he's he's still a 49er. So I mean, that's right, Breed is on the Dolphins now. I always they have a plethora of running backs there in San Francisco that Shanahan likes to use, but we'll see who's starting at quarterback for the 49ers, whether it's Garoppolo or Trey Lance. But we know one thing, Kyle Shanahan likes that outside run. And if Mitchell can get in space, you're not going to chase him down. He is too fast and too elusive. So I like that pick too.
Yeah, especially in daily fantasy too. He's going to be cheap most weeks in the first part of the season. So if you're on FanDuel or whatever you're on, or the king of sports books, you're on that too. I would pick him up quickly every single week because till he gets notice, because he's one of those backs where he can take it just on a dime. And Mostert coming back may hurt a little bit, but I feel like Mitchell, it's his job to lose in San Francisco.
I agree. Do you want to do? I have a red flag kind of guy, kind of someone who people I think should maybe avoid or wait to the later rounds. I was gonna say Devin Singletary, but he's kind of not really looked at as a really big threat, and like maybe not a top 20 running back. But I think Josh Jacobs. I think people look at him and think he could be top 15, top 10, but I don't know. In that Raider offense, they got Devontae Adams. They still have Renfro, Darren Waller. Their offensive line isn't great. So I think people tend to overrate him a little bit too much. I think you should kind of be wary of him. Maybe wait until like the 5th or 6th round to pick a guy like Josh Jacobs, don't force him. Because for me, he doesn't really have any really special attributes. He's not super fast. He's not super strong. He is, all around a good running back, but there's just questions around how I think McDaniels is going to use him this year as a Raider. So I would say just keep an eye on him if you're thinking about picking him in potentially the early, second or third round.
Okay. I'll pick Zeke Elliott. He's been disappointing. Power, his backup, Tony Power, is actually
I think he's better.
I think so too at this point. I think people who draft Zeke in the first round this year should go and watch the league. And that's the Andre of your league if you pick Zeke in the first round. Because it's name based only this year. Because Zeke has proven in the last 3 years that he's not a good running back anymore. I just think Dak and Zeke are overhyped in Dallas. So you just don't pick Zeke Elliott this year. You just don't do it.
I wanted to say Zeke too, but with my Giants hat, I didn't want people to think I have bias there. But if you watch his rookie year tape to his tape now, even if you watch him at the end of Ohio State, there's no.
Like he's going to say, there's no balance there for Zeke Elliott. There's no bounce. There's no dog mentality. He got too rich. Okay. He got absolutely too rich on there. Okay. And Aiden was about to say that there's no dog mentality to Zeke Elliott anymore. There's not a I want to win mentality. It's a mentality that just okay. What were you about to say, Aiden, with Zeke Elliott?
Yeah, sorry about that. My Wi-Fi is being a little pain right now. But yeah, if you just watch his rookie year tape, even his second year, and back to Ohio State, he kind of had that burst and that acceleration that to me is non-existent anymore. I think he's slow. As a receiver too, I think he's lost a lot of his ability to cut and turn on a dime. So for me, that's the biggest red flag. I didn't want to say it because I have my Giants hat on, and you can see that big Giants helmet right there. But yeah, to me, I wouldn't pick him at all. I would rather take Tony Pollard. I think Tony Pollard is a way better running back. I think he's still got a couple years left, but to me, I think Zeke's done. I don't think he's got a lot of football left in him.
I don't either. The shelf life for a running back is short anyway. I think you're going to get Le'Veon Bell treatment with Zeke this year. I think he's going to get benched at one point this year for Pollard, and I think it's going to be quick because Tony has shown he's got that burst. He's got that dog mentality that Zeke was famous for.
He runs super hard too, yeah.
For sure. That he came out of Ohio State. But people are going to say, hey, Josh, you're a huge Notre Dame fan. And they play Ohio State the first week, and you're dogging one of the greats from Ohio State. And I'm like, no, I'm just telling the real. Zeke has been a broke ass bitch for the last 2 years. Okay. Okay. So, it's kind of hard for me to be sitting here on ATM Bros when we keep it real because we're so good. We don't even need a time machine to tell you that he's not a red flag.
Yeah, I don't know why anybody would pick him unless you're a Dallas fan, but to me, not only is he lost his step, he has probably the worst contract in football. I mean, it's already kind of suspect to pay a running back, but when you're paying a running back who's probably the second best running back on your team, $90 million, I mean, come on, that's got to be a little bit of almost a joke at that point. So I don't know why they traded Cooper when Elliott's contract was just as bad as Cooper. I mean, Cooper's contract was still pretty bad, but to me, Elliott's contract is the worst on that team. To be the running back number 2, I mean, he's not even. I won't even consider him our running back number 1.
Absolutely, I wouldn't either in Dallas, but he's still on the depth chart number 1. But might not be there for that long. I like Power a little bit better, but that will end ATM Bros. For Aiden's first show for ATM Bros. And as you notice, here comes the rain, everybody. So, hey, we're so good, we don't need a time machine. So, See you next time. See you next Sunday.